Greetings. My name is Gray Indris. Welcome back to Developmentally Informed Trauma Aware Crisis Intervention and De-escalation. We're moving on to step 2, video 2, lesson 2, which is all about the crisis. So there are two types of crises that we should think about. The first is situational, and the second is maturational. Crises are things that happen. Situational are you get a really upsetting text from someone and it's really bad news. Maturational stress is just life events. Right now, my wife and I are going through a maturational stress, which is learning how to have an empty nest. Our 4 sons have all grown up and have left. So that's a normal family developmental stressor, is learning how to just exist of a family of 2, having been a family of 6, as a real simple example. So when a person's in crisis, their coping skills aren't working. They're being triggered. They're maybe at a spot in their brain, their amygdala, where they are feeling more than they are thinking. They are more prone to a knee-jerk, impulsive reaction than a well thought out decision. And it's a realistic struggle. Crises are real. They're not someone's imagination, not someone has made them up. And your threshold for a crisis will be different than my threshold for a crisis. But one of the benefits of crisis and crisis theory is that when people are in crisis, they're more open to help and they're more ready for change. So this is the stress model. I learned about this model from therapeutic crisis intervention, which was a model designed by Cornell University. There's this baseline behavior with a pre-crisis state. There's a triggering phase, which leads to some agitation. There's an escalation phase, which lead to some aggression, and then an outburst phase, which could be violence. The violence could be emotional violence, verbal violence, physical violence, and then we move down towards recovery. Some people take a really long time to recover, like days or weeks, and some people can recover pretty quickly within an hour. So, are you a kind of person that takes a long time to get to recovery or a short time to get to recovery? This is a really interesting cycle because it's going to help us think about 4 really important questions, and we'll get to those questions in a moment. But let's give an example of a crisis. This is an example that happened to me right around 2006. I was the individual therapist for a client in orange. You can see her on the picture there. She was a single mom working to get her kids out of child welfare. She had 2 kids that were in foster care and 1 child that had died because of abuse at the hands of her mother. It's pretty terrible stuff. So it's important to put the door on there because I share the story with you. The door becomes a trigger for her. So we used to meet on Friday mornings for therapy, and we were meeting on a Friday morning. I'm sitting on the couch, probably have a morning drink with me, and we're talking, and she shares with me, "You'll never guess what happened to me yesterday on Thursday. I was home from buying groceries. I was in the kitchen putting my groceries away. There was a knock at the door. I went and looked at the door. As I looked through the little peephole, there were 2 police officers standing there." So, side note, that's how she found out about the death of her son. There was a knock on the door. She went to the door, 2 police officers standing there. They had to tell her that her son had been killed. So for her, on this random Thursday, a knock at the door, police officer standing there, this is immediately a trigger for her. Can you only imagine? She opens the door, the officers come in, followed by her caseworker. The officer said, "We had a report there was something going on here. You might not be safe." And she says, I don't know what you're referring to, your officer. I was putting away groceries in my kitchen." And she shows them the kitchen where the groceries are on the table. What occurred was this: her caseworker had come by while she was at the store. She had left the TV on, and The noise of the TV, right, sounded like someone was fighting. So the worker went and called the police rather than trying to understand from the client's perspective. So the officers leave, the worker leaves, and you can imagine what that was like. So here we are on a Friday morning. There's a knock at the door. She's immediately a little bit escalated, right? As she was on the day before. She looks in the peephole, she turns to me and says, "Gray, you'll never guess who it is." And it was the caseworker at 8:15 on a Friday morning. I say, "Well, let her in." So she lets her in. Caseworker comes in. The caseworker says, "I didn't get to go through the house yesterday. I want to go through the house." And um, uh, I say, "It's okay." So the client in orange takes the caseworker into the kitchen. I can hear the caseworker going through every cabinet, every cupboard door opening and shutting. They then come to the living room, and the caseworker says, "I want to go into the guest room." So in the guest room, the client has a cousin staying over, and the cousin is in that room with a guest. They then come back to the living room. The caseworker is really frustrated with the client. The client didn't know that her cousin had a guest. And so the caseworker was making accusations like, "So you don't even know who's in your house, coming and going. How are you going to have a safe house for your children?" Putting the client, triggering her, and getting her really to a pre-crisis state. The worker then says, "Well, I want to go into your room." And my client says to her, "Well, I need to go put the dog up. I have a dog and I need to put the dog up." And I say, "It's okay. The dog's friendly, but let her go put her dog up." So she goes, puts the dog up, comes back, and then takes the worker into the bedroom, where at that point in time, I hear a scream, and the worker and the client run back to the living room because in the bedroom was a guest. My client had a guest of her own, and he was hiding underneath the bed, and he was completely naked. So the worker is, demanding answers from the client. The client is getting embarrassed because she had a guest over that night, and he was naked. The worker goes back into the master bedroom, demanding to see the ID of this gentleman, wanting to run him. Does he have a police report? All the while, my client is getting more and more agitated. So at this point, for me, I'm thinking, well, how do I feel? What's going on? I'm sitting on the couch when all of this is going on. The worker and the client are in the master bedroom. They're screaming. The client is screaming. The worker is screaming at the client. Everybody is at an outburst phase. This gentleman who's naked is screaming. And so I say to myself, how's this environment contributing to this problem? I step up and I go and stand on the doorway to the master bedroom. I don't go in the bedroom. I just stand at the door, holding my drink, leaning against the side of the door. The gentleman who's naked sees me. He takes a step back, which then the worker who's in his face, demanding that she get his driver's license, she pauses and she looks towards me. And I say, "Everybody, let's get out." I said, "He's naked and I don't do naked social work. Everybody out, he's naked." Client come out, worker come out. So everybody leaves the master bedroom and we shut the door so that he can get dressed. I say to the worker, I say to the client, "I think this is the wrong time for therapy. So I'm going to take the worker and we're going to leave." My client is so embarrassed. She's turned bright red. I say, "It's okay." I grab the worker. We leave. I walk the worker to her car. She literally is shaking. She is in fight or flight mode. Everybody in there was on the outburst phase. You can see this, the stress model. You could see where they were. I was pretty cool and collected, thinking, what do I feel? How do I feel? What's my best course of action? The best course of action is I don't do naked social work, and it wasn't a good time to do therapy. So it's time for us to leave. So that is an example of who the client, the environment, what am I feeling and thinking? Because there are goals to crisis intervention. The first goal is to provide immediate emotional and environmental support. The second goal is, can we teach? Is there a teachable, a therapeutic moment here? The therapeutic moment for my client in this situation was, it's okay. I validate it. It's okay. It's okay. This isn't the right time. This is okay that you're embarrassed. It's okay that you had company over. You have a right to do that, right? That whole self-determination. She has a right. So when we're finding ourselves in a crisis, we really need to be asking these 4 questions. Number 1, how am I feeling? Number 2, how's the resident, my client feeling? Who is the client? At that moment, my client was, the person in the living room with me. Then the worker arrives. She's now my client. My client number has doubled. When there's now a naked gentleman in his bedroom, my client level is now 3. So if I go to break up an argument between 2 residents, the residents are my clients. But if I grab an advocate to go with me, or I grab another therapist to go with me, they're now part of the situation. They're now part of my client load. So what is everybody thinking, feeling, needing? How's the environment contributing to the situation? We always start with self-awareness. How am I feeling? In the first video, I asked you to think about who you are. Are you a thinker, feeler, or doer? Are you a combination? What's your worldview? How was it enhanced? How was it developed? So how am I feeling now? If I am a little triggered and my client's a little triggered, the likelihood that this is going to have a good resolution is not high. It's high that we're going to escalate further. I'm going to escalate the client's going to escalate me, and we're only going to make this situation worse. So we always start with self-awareness. How am I feeling? I want to provide a secure environment. I want to do active listening. As the client's talking, I'm not talking, I'm listening. As they say something really passionate, I may lean back, I may lean forward, I may ask for clarification, I may summarize, but I do more listening. I want to build rapport with the client. I want to give genuine empathy. I want to build my relationship. And maybe there's a moment for teaching, but I'm not right out of the gate going to go into teaching mode because the front part of their brain may be inaccessible because of their stress. So, what is my nonverbal communication saying? What's my body language saying? What's my face saying? What's my eye contact saying? Am I trying to make eye contact? Am I trying to look away? I had a therapist that I worked with, and when we would staff cases, she would roll her eyes. And I one time said to her, "Do you know you're rolling your eyes?" And she said, "No, I'm not." And I said, "You are." We got up, we went to the bathroom, and we talked about cases, and she could see herself rolling her eyes. So we have to really think about, right, that self-awareness. How am I feeling? But what's my body language? What's my nonverbal language saying? What's my tone of voice saying? If I get really soft, how does my tone of voice change a situation? But if I get really strong and I lean in forward, how does my tone of voice change the situation? How am I going to encourage response? How am I going to talk to the client with genuine empathy? I want to avoid the word you statements. You did this, you did that, makes people defensive, and they have a hard time listening at that point. I want to give reflective responses. I want to ask open-ended questions like, tell me more about that. Here are some don'ts. I don't want to get in a power struggle. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. That's a power struggle. Don't talk about my mom that way. Well, your mom is a blank. What do you mean my mom is a blank? Your mom is a, right? So now we're in a power struggle. I used to be the king of power struggles. I would get in them with kids all the time. And I might end up having the last word and put them in, time out or time away or in their room. But they won because they hooked me. Avoid those you statements, as I mentioned. Avoid judgmental, avoid language like, oh, you're just manipulating. Don't be impatient. You got to have patience. Don't take things personal. When a client is angry with you and making statements that you can't make them feel safe, I respect that they have a right to not feel safe. And I'm sorry they feel that way, but I'm not going to take that personal. Avoid being fake. You have to work on your genuine skills. It might be a true skill set you need to work on. And premature problem solving, I might get to that teachable moment, but I got to get them to that resolution phase on that crisis cycle before we can get to a teachable moment. So in conclusion, what clients hear is really only about 7%. It's really about our face and our tone of voice. 58% is our nonverbals, our body language, and only about 38% is our tone of voice. So we have to practice our nonverbal communication, because at the end of the day, we may say all of the right stuff, but the clients may not hear it. They may only see what we're presenting. Hey, thanks so much for joining me on session 2, and I look forward to connecting with you for the third and final session.